Welcome to a brand spanking new episode of Who Do You Think You Are? An exploration into how our thoughts, beliefs, and feelings create our reality. My name is Lastia Cahoot and I'm your host. I'm joined by my co-host on this show and in life, Glenn Sheridan. Every episode, we're joined by a special guest who inspires us to consider not only what we think, but how we think and how that thinking impacts our life experience. It's time to get this conscious conversation started as we ask today's guest, who do you think you are? Here we are. Good morning. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand spanking new episode of Who Do You Think You Are? My name is Lastia. I am your host, and once again, I am here with my co-host on this show and in life, Mr. Glenn Sheridan.
Good morning. Good day, everyone.
And once again, as always, we have a super special guest with us today. As we get started, though, I would just like to say thank you. We are coming to you today from Saanich on Vancouver Island on the unceded lands of the Wasanich people, where we live, work, breathe, and play, and are so grateful to do so. So here's a little bit about our special guest today. Our special guest considers herself an avid learner, passionate educator, effective communicator in pursuit of intriguing curiosities, and is an eager anticipator of what the future holds. Judging by her bio and just seeing in her bio, education and learning has been a huge component and focus of her life. She has been part of redesigning the kindergarten to grade 12 education system in the province of Saskatchewan. She has also had a hand in what's happening in BC. She has been part of conceptualizing the redesign of the public school education system in the Sultanate of Oman. She is part of the professional development arm of British Columbia's Principals and Vice Principals Association. She also oversaw the creation of essential skills profiles for over 1,000 Canadian jobs. She has also been part of conceptualizing and implementing and overseeing the on-site workplace learning centers for 2 Northwest Territories diamond mines, and has consulted on workplace mining skills development in Canada, Chile, and Mongolia. Now, on a more personal note, she talks about how she loves interacting with her super talented son. She loves immersing herself in nature. She loves learning all she can about energy and its profound interactive presence in our life. She enjoys reading metaphysical, historical, and historical fiction literature. And she loves participating in both online and in-person learning with leading scientists, physicists, and doctors. She is always asking questions, and she is always aware of the importance of being in service whenever possible. Now, I met this person through my work at the chiropractic clinic where I work part-time, and we have had many conversations that only last about 5 minutes or so, because that's all the time there is in between appointments. So based on those conversations, knowing what has already bubbled up and everything that is making its way to the surface, I would like to ask Donna Palmer, tell us, who do you think you are?
That is an excellent question with many layers. So today, and most days, well, all days, my answer is that I am a particle or a wave of God. That's who I really am. Now, when I told my partner that I was coming on this show, he's saying, but like, who are you? You're retired. You don't work anymore. And I was actually quite offended because I'm just in a place in my life where I don't have all of those labels that you have when you're growing up, you know, when you're 20 and your 30s and your 40s and your 50s and your 60s. And then when you get to your 70s, it's like everyone thinks you're kind of nothing anymore because you don't have labels. But I think it's likely the best part of your life right now because you get to go back to realizing you are that particle of God.
I love that answer.
You're here.
All right. The floodgates have opened, the floodgates of infinite possibilities. Oh, Donna, thank you so much for that response. I remember when you mentioned that your partner, said, "Well, what do you who are you and what do you do that you are retired?" And I just think it's so interesting that you just kind of, wherever you are, and it doesn't have to be, just like in your 70s. We can be at this stage anytime in our life when we sort of really come to realize that all the labels, all the roles, all the expectations, the jobs that we've had, the work that we do, the relationships that we have with someone, all of the stuff that we've kind of identified as, up until this moment, that's just what we've done. But who we truly are is I love how you said it, that you are either a particle or a wave of God. And in that is just the infinite potentiality of what's possible, the gazillions of different realities or experiences that we can choose from at any given moment. And it's just so thrilling and exciting, to know that, that's who we truly are. So I mean, tell us, Donna. I mean, you had, and I sort of like pointed to your bio that I just placed there. You have, what it sounds like, had a very rich life, steeped in learning and education, and knowing that you continue to be curious. Um, I wonder sort of, what does curiosity look like for you? What does it feel like for you?
Always having a question, always observing, always searching, looking, and I don't mean just in books, like even watching nature right now and watching the flowers that are beginning to emerge in the little meadow below our place. Always having a question, because there's always there's always something more, there's always a reason for how things are connected. And I think in all of those years growing up and getting all our labels as we progress through our each decade, we lose track of the interconnectedness, and we start to make things really solid, and we don't leave open any room for questioning or possibilities or hearing other ways of life. And I think our society right now is so polarized, like it's either right or wrong. You're this side or that side. Curiosity. Yesterday, I was listening to one of my favorite people, Gregg Braden, a geologist, scientist, searcher, and he's on Gaia. He has the program Missing Links, and he was talking about how Darwin and the concept of evolution, but there's a break in evolution when it comes to humans, because there's this space. Even when you look at the pictures of the depiction, how's that for words? You can see there's a space between orangutan and man, like there's something missing. And he said it so beautifully yesterday when he said, through all his work and his travels, that evolution and what Darwin said is so right for plants and animals and birds and everything, but it doesn't work all the way for humans. And he was sharing some work yesterday about Lake Paracas in Peru, and finding skulls in the archaeological digs. Let me back up. You remember Egypt, and you see the pictures on the wall, and you see the pictures like Nefertiti, and she has the elongated skull.
Yeah.
Well, they were just depicted, and they thought they were drawings, but they've actually found skulls with that extra large cranium now. So it's like, oh my gosh. And is there something that they might be coming onto? Like, how can you not get excited about something like that? So to me, curiosity is excitement and wanting to find out, and just being alive. I think it's being alive. Want to find out for yourself rather than let the TV and everyone else and culture and society tell you how it's supposed to be.
I love how you just ended that, because when you were talking about polarization and this idea of sort of, being either right or wrong, or you're with us or you're against us, or you're, part of the solution or you're part of the problem, you're on the right side of history, on the wrong side of history. It's sort of seems to be never ending at this point. You care, you don't care, you're selfish, you're not selfish enough. Um, but this idea of sort of, discovering for yourself, and trusting and knowing that, and it's not even about the answers, because I love how you talk about just like questioning, and even like being in the question or living in the question, because there's always so much more to discover and investigate and explore and lean into. I mean, this is part of what my foundational life belief is that there is always more to learn, always more to discover, always more to lean into, to become, to expand into, to be expanded by, and even down to just sort of more practical. Like there's always more money, there's always more time, there's always more energy, there's always more of me to go around. And even though there are sort of external sources, which aren't even external, I mean, we're all interconnected, and everything is, and everyone and everything is a reflection, of each other. But there is inspiration that seemingly comes from without, through people who open our minds to new discoveries or new ways of thinking or new perspectives. And I feel like in a time where there is a lot of polarization, and there is a lot of, I'm going to believe what I'm being told, by people, by the news, by the government, by certain groups, or even being in a community of like-minded people and thinking we have the answers, we know what it's all about, and continuing to go down that one sort of, tunnel visioned path. It, for me, that's curiosity, but like to an extent. And what I'm hearing from you is to just be open, to just like, really be just a sponge, and have this childlike curiosity and wonder of whatever, of being open to whatever it is that wants to present itself, whatever it is that wants to be explored and discovered. And that's something that really, really resonates with me. And that's why for the last 5.5 years, I've been in spiritual and consciousness studies, because for me, it's, when I first learned that when it really landed for me that I am the creator of my reality according to how I use my mind, which is used based on my worldview, my beliefs that I, subscribe to, but I can change that at any time. And one of those beliefs, I guess, I mean, I haven't, except for that there is always more part, haven't sat down to sort of really articulate it, and maybe I don't have to, but is that I can always question those beliefs. I can always reevaluate whether those beliefs are actually working to support me to live in the question, to be open to discovery and exploration, rather than continue living life based only on what I have experienced, what I remember, what I have learned up until this moment now.
You know, what's so fascinating? I think this next 30 or 50 years of my life, however much God grants me here, my first 70 years were all about learning. I think my next 30, 40, 50 years are all about unlearning, because that's just what you've said, that you can change your beliefs, but I'm sure just how hard that work is. I mean, that stuff is ingrained in you
Yeah.
from from basically 7 years of age. And I mean, Bruce Lipton in his work Biology of Belief and whatnot talks about all of that. And I mean, just think of those young children up to the age of 7 that are just so curious. You use the word sponge. all of that is just so much. And somehow, not all of us, but somehow that gets in the stuffed in the closet, buried behind us, because we've got to learn these things and these things and these things, and we've got to behave in such a way. And if we don't, you're labeled something else and whatnot. And it's like, okay, how, in what manner can we encourage individuals to stay open? My goodness, how can we encourage them to believe in their self
Mhm.
and to know that there's specialness that came with them when they were born? And how do you honor and play that out? Because we program so much, and in the end, you just stop fighting and go along with it because it's easier. And I mean, how many times do you knock your head against the wall, or you ask a question and, oh, you shouldn't have asked the question because the teacher, had this whole big lead up to where she was going and you got it in the first 3 seconds. So I think in our world now, there's a whole lot of unlearning. And when I say unlearning, I'm not saying that everything that we've learned or experienced or whatever is wrong. I'm going to build on what Henry Nelson Weiman, who's a theologian in the late 40s and 50s, and he wrote a very dense book. um, dense in that it's packed full of meaning. In fact, it's called Man's Ultimate Commitment. And one line that I've carried with me for the last 30, 40 years is man's ultimate commitment is to always share with you the best that I know right now, but there's a second part, and I reserve the right to improve upon the best that I know right now.
Mm.
And we've done all of this sharing, evolution is here, man evolved, this is here, there are no spaceships, there are no aliens, there are no other ways to do things. Like you can only do this for COVID, there's no other possibilities. And it's like, whoa, but there's a second part. There's a whole lot of other people working on this too. And can't we just hear their views? And can't we be taught, encouraged to sort through that ourselves and come to our own thoughts and ideas and opinions? I'm not saying, don't say COVID doesn't exist. I mean, I have a brother-in-law who died and another brother-in-law who spent 11 days on a ventilator. I know it exists, but I can choose to look at other information, but I want to do the best for myself, because in doing the best for myself, I know that I'm doing best for others by how things unfold. And I think it's that second part. Maybe I guess that's my passion, curiosity, and like, hey, I reserve the right to improve upon the best that I taught you. I didn't tell you stuff that was wrong. It was the best that I knew. My parents, your parents, when they were raising us, they were doing the best that they knew with the resources that they had. They didn't set out to screw us up by the majority. There are always exceptions. So, hey, now I know more than my parents knew when I was raising my son, and he knows more now than knows and has access to so much more. Like, let's celebrate that opportunity for growth and opportunity and improving, instead of trying to fit people into little boxes and telling them which road they should go and when they should go and how far and how they should feel about it. I don't know. There's just so much opportunity and possibility, and we're not using it. We're not working with what God gave us.
I there's so much to unpack there, and so much that I would love to address, and questions, responses. And I guess because you spent so much time of your life in the public education system in different places, and you're so passionate about just knowing how curious and creative kids are until the age, of around 6 or 7. And then how people start, or they start to sort of get, ushered into these boxes or these pathways. Maybe it is for, or actually, why? That's my question. Why? Like, if we are so curious and creative, and we are constantly asking questions, which I know sometimes as a parent can drive us bonkers, when it's just why. But to just to want to learn and just be so excited and enthusiastic to learn and know why, and just keep asking questions, is such a gift. And so why is it then that these boxes start to form, that these pathways, that these grooves, that these trajectories, with school, with sort of even, and I guess I'll only speak from a Western perspective, having grown up in Canada. Why is it that sort of, like, you're born, you learn to walk, you learn to speak, you go to school, you learn to read and to play with others, and then you start learning things like math and English and science, and you go, through the school system, the education system, whether it's private or public. And there are many different ways of learning, but basically it's sort of like there's this curriculum, kind of like you said earlier on in the conversation. There's stuff that we're taught, there's stuff that we're supposed to know, stuff that we're supposed to memorize and learn, and we take exams that show how well we've memorized or conceptualized the information that we've been given. But the idea of really investigating and getting curious in the material, or in the curriculum, in what it is that sort of is presented, where is that? Where's the curiosity? Where's the imagination? We were very, very fortunate to have found Montessori for our daughter. And I investigated a few different forms of learning before we settled into Montessori. And as soon as I walked into that first classroom at the school where she ended up going, I just knew, like, I felt in my entire body, tears started flowing, because I just knew, as I sat in that tiny little chair that they have in CASA classrooms for the 3 to 5-year-olds, this is where Milana would not only go to school, but she would graduate grade 6 from there, because that's as far as they went at the time, having no idea how we were going to make that happen, how we were going to end up paying for it, how it was going to work time-wise, whatever sort of thing. But just feeling how the kids were able to not only learn the skills and the information that they're supposed to learn as they go through school, but the way that they were able to use their imaginations, the way they were able to learn in multi-sensory ways, not just one specific way, the way they were taught math, which, I mean, I remember when Glenn and I went to the first parent teacher introduction night or something, and they were talking about a cube and these beads and whatever. And we're kind of looking at this going, what? But when the kids are like multiplying these big numbers in their heads, and not only like doing the multiplication with the numbers, but seeing, shapes and patterns and things in their mind's eye, and can just sort of do it quickly, it's incredible. And it's because they're learning in different ways than we were learning. And they become contributing members of society. Like, it's a little community, a little society. And because they are grouped in ages of 3 years, the older ones mentor the younger ones, and the younger ones, end up growing up and becoming the mentors as they move into the next level. And it was such an incredible opportunity for us to just sort of allow whatever it is that was Milana's to experience, whatever it is that was hers to become, to just happen, because we just saw how she thrived in this environment. And now, fast forward many, many years later, she is now in grade 12. She did end up going to public school for high school, and has created an amazing high school experience for herself. And she's going back to Toronto to continue her education there, because that's where she wants to go. And we're kind of excited. She's going back to the community that she was born in and grew up in, until we moved here to the West Coast. But anyway, so she's had that incredible experience, and we have also parented in the best way that we've known how to allow her to have that experience and really just grow into her own and become all that she can possibly be, and not stifle her, into some kind of box or pattern or groove because we think that that's how her life should be. And maybe, ask her 10, 20 years down the road, she might respond differently. Thinking her perspective was not the same. But all the same, it's a very different experience than I had growing up, where everybody learned the same way. You were tested in the same way, and there was sort of, you kind of said like, and if you didn't pass, you were labeled that, whoa, you had a learning disability, or you failed, or whatever. And even now, the idea of high school, that they can go to high school for like 2 or 3 years more, no problem. And even those who like end up continuing on, they can go to college at the same time and get credit for their courses. And because they're still in high school, they don't actually have to pay. All these different, methods of learning, all these different subjects that didn't exist when I was in high school. Like, it's exciting. It makes me think, I would love to be in high school right now, because there are so many options and so many opportunities available. It's just, speaks to those sort of infinite possibilities and potentialities. Anyway, that was very long, but I want to come back to, why is it that there is this funneling that happens? Why is it that there is this, like, boxing into, this is the way that, kids are supposed to learn, and instead of just like really, I don't know, inspiring and activating their imagination and their curiosity to more expansive ideas. And I don't know, does that question make any sense, or
It
inspire you
makes
to
some
answer?
sense. It definitely makes sense. And I think it's schools, schools, schools are an institution. They're a remnant of society that served us well in the way they were at one time. You talk eloquently about what's happening with high school and for your daughter at this time and how that's working. But many of our large institutions are failing. Like, I think there comes a time in societies, and again, so you go back to some of the readings, but there comes a time in societies where the organizations that were built to serve the people end up serving the organization. So a teacher has X number of people in a class. He or she has a government curriculum. They see the student for X number of minutes for days, over X number of days, over a certain amount of time, and they test them on the content. So the driver is an external driver. Am I making sense? It's what the teacher has to do. And then you have X number of children in your classroom, and we hear the stories from the Teachers University. We never hear the classes are too small. They're always too big, and there's not enough time, or they don't have the resources. So the fact that you go into school and you go into a classroom, which is a box with, say, 25 to 30 children, with a bell that's going to ring in however many minutes, or some signal that time's up, move on. It's a system that's built in blocks by a society to instill where our culture believes to be what we need to know and what not to be socially acceptable, fit into the culture, et cetera, et cetera. So the system itself is made of boxes and how things have to work. And I don't know about you, but I grew up in a large family, and my mom is wonderful. She's going to be 90. She's still alive. And But when you've got 8 kids running around with a 13-year span of time from the youngest to the oldest, you kind of try to let them do things, but there comes a point when you just say, all right, everybody's going to do this. And I think that in some ways, in some schools and for some teachers, that's how it becomes, because you've got, well, if you didn't get this covered, how is the next teacher that's going to get them going to cover their part if you didn't cover their part? So our system needs, our system has become very rigid. And in nature, there's always a flexibility, a softness, a hardness, a yielding, a giving. And we don't have that in many of our classrooms. There are always good teachers, and there are always folks that are trying to do things in different ways and open them up and truly encourage and engage the children that are in front of them. But sometimes it's just damn hard given the parameters in which you're supposed to work and what you're supposed to cover. So how and what are the changes that could be made? Because our children, when I was going to school, when you were going to school, they're much more advanced than we were. Not better, not worse, but they come in with more because you've had more life experience, or I've had more life experiences that we pass on to our children. But the system in which we enter is still the old system. Mm. I don't know if that's making any sense. By virtue of the activities that we afford our children, that we're able to gift our children with, they come into our schools and they know so much more. Like, a 4-year-old granddaughter is already better on a computer. You all hear the stories. We want to fix your computer. I mean, hey, look at us in technology earlier today. Just get the little one, and they come in and say, well, you just do this and this and this and this. Yeah. We didn't grow up with them. They have, and now it's part of their life, and it's just something that they use and do. But they go into a school where, even in I saw this past fall, a new modern school, the classrooms are smaller boxes with still 25 kids crammed in them, but there's no elbow room hardly for anyone to do anything in there. And the computers are on a cart that get rolled down to the classroom. And they use a textbook that is how old and was written. It was old before it was even produced. So the system cramps what the teacher and what the individual can do, unless you have a very creative teacher that's willing to go outside the boxes, who will then get pulled in by his or her colleagues because she's setting an example that, isn't good for the rest of them. So it's a system that's, it needs a lot of rain and a lot of moisture, so it has to just burst open and be something else. I don't know how else to explain it. We've got these enlightened, capable, knowledgeable young folks that are going into boxes. They're going into little pictures like each of us are on our screen. Mm-hmm. And that's your play space.
And so I love hearing from people, friends who homeschool, people we know, friends who have their kids in alternative schools that spend a lot of time in nature and spend a lot of time playing and imagining and still learning the stuff that we're supposed to learn along the way. Because it just, it's different. It's different than the sort of regular public school system. And I would think because, you speak to that flexibility in nature versus the rigidity of the public school system, and just being out in nature, being on the grass, being around trees, and just feeling the energy of everything around us, can only stir the energy that we are. And so I love, seeing the Facebook posts or hearing the updates or whatever of all the discoveries that these young minds and hearts and souls are making and questioning and exploring as they spend more time outside in nature rather than sitting inside in front of a screen at a desk with now, less elbow room. So there is change. There is, evolution happening. But yeah, I guess I just wanted to sort of know, why, and everything you make or said makes sense about how, the institution itself worked at one point and hasn't really shifted enough to kind of keep up with the times or to allow for something new to emerge. So the fact that you said that, it needs some moisture and needs some, sunshine and rain and soil and whatever to burst open, then yeah, I'm all for that. Honey Bunch, weigh in here. I know that you have the stuff on your mind that you want to add, that you want to ask, that you want to share.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really interested in listening to what your take is on where we're at with ourselves and with our children. I think over the last couple of years, it's been like a, I don't want to use what we're talking about as these things are affecting us. I mean, there is a bit of a loop back, but I think it's displaying where we are in our consciousness, where we hit pause a few years ago, and that enabled us to question, what's important and who we are and what are our values, and how do we go forward, kind of thing. So as you mentioned at the beginning, there's a lot of polarity and sort of binary options that you have to pick a side, and you have to go on one or the other of those choices. But this opportunity to sort of look at what are these choices, so even the thing like education, because there's been such a, especially in the United States, there's been such a pressure put on parents and then their children over things like masking alone, has made so many people step back and go, wait a minute, like, who's the parent here? Who truly believes they have the best interest of their child at heart? Is it the state, or is it the parent, or the person looking after the child? So these are interesting times because, as you mentioned at the beginning too, about this thing of institutions that seem so eternal to us, because we grew up with, well, there's always the corner bank, and there's always the school and the church, and who tells us what's going on? Well, that would be the media, that would be the newspaper, and then it became the radio, and then the television, and now it's computer news and whatever. But I think those things are being shifted, like the ground on which they sit. You just realize, no, they're just an option. They are a version of what is possible, but they're certainly not the only version. And I think these times have made people realize, well, why is my idea any less valuable or true than the official reality version of what's true? So you have people just say pulling their kids out of school because they think, I'm just going to get a bunch of local families together, and we'll just combine our resources, and we'll do homeschooling, or we're going to just go into nature more and do that kind of thing. And especially when you had in various parts of the world where you had, with this whole lockdown thing, being told, no, you can't do that, like, you have to stay home. And I think little light bulbs went off in people's heads, and they're like, and then in their hearts, where they're thinking, well, no, that just doesn't make any sense, you know. Yes, we were all kind of concerned at the beginning. Well, what are the reasons for this? And we don't want to make things worse, so we'll listen. But at a certain point, you have to go, well, no, I don't. That just doesn't work for me. And if I don't feel that I'm who I am in my interactions with others, then kind of what's the point? You know, what is this society that we've built, whether it's our community or our nation, or, you know, the right people, whatever that is. If we don't have the ability to sort of examine those things, and especially periodically, like if it's been 2+ years in most Western countries, and they're only now starting to do little reviews in certain parts of the world to determine, like I know BC right now, they're starting to look at what has been the response to this, and what was it appropriate, proportional, and did we, you know, did we do the right thing? Could we have done things better? And there's still such polarization of things like opening up schools and masking and, you know, travel and this kind of thing. So we're still at that kind of border thing of, well, if you have this sort of constricted thing about your outlook, your worldview, you think, no, we're still in danger. We're not out of the danger yet. We can't go back to what was normal. Then it's going to make doing those examinations kind of a challenge, you know? So how much, you know, how much then can you look at the data that comes out of those reports and those, you know, I'm assuming there's going to be some government reports put out, the federal and provincial and territorial levels, to find out, like here in Canada, what did we do, and was it right, and can we do it better? But how much can we actually then, we're back to that issue of like, how much can I believe what that is that truth, is that real? So we're back to the thing of like, well, I don't necessarily believe what's on the news, and we'll take a step back further from that. And I heard, I don't know if it was Wayne Dyer or someone, but basically that thing of, you know, don't believe everything you think. Like, just because a thought comes into your mind doesn't mean that's the truth. That's a version of where you are at consciously. So this whole thing of, like, you talked at the beginning about education last year, and you were back and forth about that. And that's a really good model of how things have been done for the last 200-300 years. And I think that comes from the Prussian model, like the Prussian model that got with expanded into the fabric of that Austro-Hungarian Empire, and then, you know, later Germany, and when that affected the education models throughout Western countries, and how, like, well, we're going to do this by rote, and it just shows people how to be a good worker, soldier, citizen, you know, just hunker down, and there's that nationalism. But then, of course, there's the other version of that. The other consideration of that is to be a good citizen in the collective model in Germany, even before the 20th century kicked off. That was a national idea. In Britain, it was more an individual, and especially in the States now, you have the ultimate version of the individual rights, you know. So that combining into collective good and individual good, and trying to figure out where we're at, we're still there in that kind of experiment. But I the way I back to my original point, and I'll be quiet, is that's where we're at. That's where the needle is at. That's what we're reading. It's not what's happening. That's where we're consciously, our thoughts and our feelings and our desires and our dreams. That's where we've been brought to, is that we've got such discordancy and chaos, and then possibilities over here. Is like, well, we don't have to do those things the way. And when you have people just ripping their money out of the banks because they think if that's possible here, they can just take your money. I'll do something else with it. I'll invest in crypto. I'll do, you know, I'll put my money into my garden, I'll feed my family and my community because I got this big lawn and I'll turn it into a tomato field or whatever, you know, like why not that? And I just think that's kind of where I see it as being an optimistic thing. And I don't know where the children fit into that. I know they're the next generation of elders eventually, but I want them, to be an integral part of this. And I'm just going to see that, it works out well. And, it's not crossing my fingers, but I just know it's like, I'm going to then let it go and just be at peace with it. That was a lot. Sorry.
No, it's actually, it's very interesting because what I saw and what I heard was a person, you, wrestling with, well, there's this and there's this and there's that and there's whatever. And you go back 2 years, whether you love COVID, you hated it, whichever side you're on, it doesn't matter. It was a catalyst for change. Forced change, maybe from what some people say, but kids weren't in school and they were at home and parents were spending more time with their kids. Many families before the kids were so programmed to go to gymnastics, whatever, just line it up and drive them around. And all of a sudden, do you remember? It was like a ghost town in our little communities here on the peninsula. And people had to get to know one another again. I think that's incredible that you actually got to spend more time with more people. Now, after a while, it got to be heaven or hell, or maybe some of each at different times, because all of a sudden you were learning more about these beings that you were having to spend more time with, working from home and all of these things. And it changed things. At first there was no toilet paper or whatever it was, and yeast for making bread. And when in our community did we ever experience that? When did we ever experience that? It was always there. You just went and got it, whatever you needed. And even nowadays, there are little things that are still empty on the shelf, crazy little things like nail files, emery boards. But these past few years, I look at it as wake up call isn't the right word, but I don't have better words right now. But it forced us to examine a lot of things about ourselves. For me, and this is only my perspective, unfortunately, around the world, it was handled in such a way that I'm starting to think of words here. It's like we gave away our power. We gave away our energy, and other people told us what we had to do and when we had to do it and whatnot. And the media and all of the things that you talk, whatever your source of news, was built on fear. And they showed us the pictures, India, you name whichever country. So it was like you questioned yourself. We all did. And the people that, I guess we gave away our power and we questioned ourselves. And out of this 2 years, I think that we're coming back now to say, wait a minute. Was that where was it founded and was it right? And we did things to protect ourselves and to protect our loved ones, to protect our family. And as it got going on, we started to question because there wasn't a unanimity across I'm thinking like hell across our world, across our country, even in our province. And all of a sudden, when you see all these different things, it became, well, who's right and who's wrong? And I think the opportunity we missed was teaching people, and we missed, it goes right back to schools, of teaching people to look at multiple sources and find out the facts. At one time, news gave us facts and we made opinions. Now news gives us opinions and we have to search for the facts. And that's what's really changed. People keep giving us our opinions, but they don't say, in my opinion, or in my research. They say, well, no, blah, 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 and here's this. I saw the greatest billboard. We had the opportunity. We took a month to leave the peninsula and went in search of sunshine. We went south from our rains. And I saw this wonderful billboard. And the gist of the comment was about COVID. And it was, it's your responsibility to be informed. And then it's your responsibility to make your choice. And I thought, it didn't say, go and get vaccinated, go and get a booster, go and get it. It just said, go check it out and figure out what's right for you. And I thought, that to me is empowering. That to me is empowering. Go to find out for yourself. So I think COVID was an opportunity. It sure didn't seem like it when we were in it. And it sure has contributed, I believe, to the polarization of either this or not. I mean, look at the convoy, so we'll put the police on the corners and they can't go to Victoria, but we'll set up a place for them in Campbell River. Like what is right or what is wrong? And, what was the original intent of the Freedom Convoy? The original intent of that convoy was about, truckers were essential workers in the beginning of COVID, get it through, make everything move. And then all of a sudden, on whatever date it was, no, all truckers have to be vaccinated to transport goods across the border. And it was like, how do we go from essential workers to be all of a sudden, here's the change? And then it got co-opted, as so many things do, right? It got co-opted by freedoms and rights and whatnot. So that to me is a little bit of a sadness about that, because what their original purpose was and what it ended up and where it is now, it isn't even, it got messed up along the road. And I mean, hey, that's fine. So recognize that that's what happened. But I wish I right now could say what the clear purpose is, but I can't. And to be honest with you, I don't have so much energy. I have a lot of energy, but where do I want to put my energy? And this talk comes back to what you said earlier about, the kids go outside and how we feel. When we go outside into nature, when you put your bare feet on the grass of the ground, you're actually grounding yourself to the tuning of the earth. And when you work in your garden or you walk in the woods or wherever, your body tunes in to we're the same vibration as nature. And I guess for me, one of the big things we lost along the way is asking ourselves, asking that inner core piece of God that lives within you, how does this feel for me? Does this feel like something I should do, or does it feel not? We've been socialized to not trust our own inner knowing and our inner self. Heck, some people don't even know that they have an inner knowing or an inner self or a gut reaction. They ignore that. And yet what we're learning now about our body, and that actually it's through our stomach, sends signals to our heart, and the 40,000 neurons in our heart, the little brain in the heart, now sends stuff to the brain in our head, who then runs through the library and brings all stuff back and goes through. Like how we even function as humans, and the energy that we have, we emit, that we bump into and don't like, all of those kind of things. I guess I'm kind of like you, Glenn. I can't call you honey bunch because you're not my honey bunch. What can I say?
I'll allow it. I'll allow it.
But it's, I guess if I could have a big wish besides the unlearning, when I say unlearning, it's about take what we know and we've been taught and let's build upon it with what we know and what's available to us now. Let's work with what we know about energy in our body. Let's be discerning and go and research to find out which path is right for us. And if you have children, for your children, because you still have a responsibility, and how do you teach them along the way to make discerning decisions and run it by, is this right for me? And if it's not, then you have choices that you make. We always have choices. And I think we have to choose to learn to know more about ourselves and learn more to live more from that soulful center of ourselves. Like I said at the beginning, we are all, each and every one of us, whether someone likes you or not, we're all particles of God, and we all have a part to play, a role to play. And if we don't play it, there are going to be empty spots in that big tapestry that we call life. And it's like, I don't know, we just have to get back to being us, each and every one of us, to being us. And that's not an easy path. And I think the older you are, the more difficult the path can be. Doesn't have to be, but can be. And I also think, as I sit here talking with you like this over technology, how fortunate we are, because I've been in places like when I was in Oman for the redesign of their school system. It was like walking back in time. Small room, desks, benches, tables, two people at a desk, rote learning, repeat after me. And it was a shock to actually go from British Columbia, from helping to implement changes here in Saskatchewan, and to step back into how it used to be. But I've often thought, then they went outside and they ran home because there were so many children and their rooms were so small that they had to alternate, young ones in the morning and older ones in the afternoon. And my thought was, hey, that's great, because usually older ones don't want to get up early anyway. And the little ones are always up early and dragging you crazy. So, we sit where we are right now. We are so fortunate and so blessed. I look at the young people, all ages of people, women and children, leaving Ukraine with a cat or a dog or a teddy bear and a suitcase, and the hands of someone a little bit older going to who knows where. And we're just so, so fortunate. So how do we that live in such abundant conditions figure out what and who we are and bring that to play in the world? So that's a bigger question than we started with. I don't know.
I could listen to you all day, Donna. I think that one of the key things that came up for me there was choice. And I am just steeped in the knowing through my spiritual and consciousness studies, but like really steeped in the knowing that not only are we always at choice, but we're always choosing, whether we're aware of it or not. Excuse me. And so I think one of the things for me that is key is awareness. And the more that we can foster and cultivate awareness that each and every one of us is this infinite expansive energy, is a particle and or wave of God at any moment in time, that we are reflections of, the extraordinary mountainscape before us and the vastness of the sky and every twinkling star in that night sky, that we are the power of the blazing sun, that we are infinite potentiality in action, in motion, like flowing all the time, not even like lying in wait, to become something, that we are continually becoming, that the more we can cultivate the awareness that that's who we are, then the more we open ourselves up to using our imaginations. And I mean, even in using these words, it's like boxing things in, but for good. And I don't mean like good versus evil kind of thing. I'm talking about, just like unleashing the creativity from within. Really tuning into, you talked about grounding and tuning into the vibration of the earth, tuning into the vibration of the earth that is also that intuitive wisdom, that is available to us at any moment of any given day, and just allowing that to flow, and being open to the question, being curious all the time, and investigating and exploring and reevaluating all the time. I mean, big words came up, facts, opinions, information, responsibility, building upon, discerning. And I sort of feel at this moment in time that the more aware we are of how powerful and creative we are, then the more we can discern between, information versus fact versus opinion. The more we can trust our intuition, trust our gut, trust our feelings, and still reevaluate and question those feelings, and not just automatically make decisions based on feelings, because I feel like there's a danger in that as well. Um, and there's so much possibility and room then for seeing from another perspective, from understanding why someone is behaving a certain way, or why they might look at something, or why their perspective may be the way it is. There's an opportunity for just more listening, more understanding, more compassion. And I feel like when we can ground ourselves in listening and understanding and being curious and questioning and evaluating, and really just like exploring how we not only show up in our life, but how we relate to others, and what part we play in the reality that we're experiencing, then that's how we can continue to create a better world, not only for ourselves, but those around us. And then in general, because we're all energy. So what we do, how we behave, how we show up, how we act, how we explore, it's all energy, it's all consciousness. And what I do for myself can only affect the consciousness of those around me, of the world, of all time, space, and beyond, because it's all one thing. And we are, even though we're that profound, immense, infinitely creative, constantly evolving and expanding thing, we are a unique, original, individualized expression of it. And it's like all of that in, this tiny little package with all of that potential at any given time. And that's just so exciting. And I guess that's also maybe the sort of what can be a source of frustration for me, and a source of impatience for me, because it's like, well, if we are all that, if we are all, capable of being, all of that at any given moment, why aren't we? And even through the last couple of years with the unfoldment of COVID. And, you talked about the truckers and what was the original intention and how it got co-opted and then, ended up unfolding the way it's unfolded so far. How our government had, and whether it's the provincial government or the Canadian government, how various levels of government have just, and I'm going to use a big word that is now like a meme at this point, have all just sort of followed the one main narrative, which has been grounded very much in fear and control without questioning and exploring. Glenn talked about how, it's 2+ years later since the beginning. And just now the government is saying, hey, how do you think we did? How do you think the response was? Do you think maybe there were other ways that we could have looked at this? When it was like all along, there were people screaming at the top of their lungs once people, started to feel more confident that, hey, I'm not the only one who's thinking that there might be a different way to look at this. There might be a different way to respond. And just like you, Donna, saying that it's not that COVID, isn't happening, that it's not something that isn't a part of our lives. And I also don't subscribe to the idea that it's something that is happening to us, that is something that is external, that it is something evil. COVID is just as much an expression of God as anything or anyone else. And I feel like until we understand that we have all had a hand in the COVID unfoldment, in the COVID response, that if we keep seeing it as something that is happening to us, something that is outside of ourselves, we're constantly going to keep seeing it that way. We're constantly going to keep seeing it as something that is trying to destroy us or get it, make our lives miserable, that is keeping us from living a normal life. And for me, that's incredibly frustrating. And I just feel like with all of these different ways of looking at things and with all of these different ways of questioning and communicating and just listening, like, why has there not been more listening? Why has there been so much judgment and criticism and blaming and shaming, which, all of the polarization that has happened. And I know for me personally, and I know I'm jumping around sort of here, it's just been a constant opportunity every moment to, what am I going to put my attention on? Just kind of like you said a few minutes ago, where am I going to put my energy? Some days it's been really challenging and hard, and there have been tears and feeling hurt and wounded. And then there are other days where it's like, even with that going on, I am so fully grounded in, formed and informed by the knowing that I am always choosing, that I am the infinite expansive universe in motion, at play, that I am the one who gets to choose where I put my attention, not the media, not my spiritual community, not my friends, not my family, not Glenn, not Milana, me. I'm the one who gets to choose. And I can either choose knowingly with awareness, on purpose, with intention, by design, or I can just leave it to chance and leave it to those around me, leave it to the media, without really investigating and exploring and questioning. And with all of that, trusting my heart and my gut to just lead me through it all. Period. End of sentence.
I think through all of it, what we can say, I would put as a fact, COVID was a change agent. COVID is a change agent. Things have changed. If nothing more, COVID is a change agent. And when you said earlier, we're going to, how did we do? I think in different areas, we have different degrees of doneness, good or bad, what we did, but it's a change agent. And I think the other thing is, we make choices. And every choice we make, we're creating something.
Yeah.
And you're right, we create it. So maybe the question I'd leave everyone is when you want to when you just wanted, you know how you just got to tell someone something? Can you give yourself a moment and figure out how to put that into a question? So, have you ever thought about this? Or have you ever considered? Or what do you think about it? It's a little thing I use right now. There are some days I just want to shoot both barrels full on. And I know that and you feel it, And it's like, okay, what's the question? What's the question? Because you get conversation when you ask questions, usually, not always. Usually you get a conversation when you ask a question. But sometimes if you just put it out there, for me, a lot of times it just ends up with a dead silence on the other side. And I know that I fired too much and I should have asked a question. But I think we're in wonderful times, even though a lot of days, even I think it doesn't look so wonderful, but it's opportunity. It's opportunity, and COVID was our change agent. And I think I would be pressed to find a person to say that there's nothing has changed in their life in the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, pick up, look for facts, chart your pathway, make sure you keep exploring, asking questions, looking, make choices, because when you make those choices, then you're creating.
Mahoney, any thoughts?
Oh, I like that. That's the moving your feet thing, right? That's do
So,
if you're in harmony with who you are, then you just trust whatever I'm doing is right. Then, as you say, make the choice. And it's not like what is the worst that can happen. It's like, what's next? Like
exactly.
it'll just lead to another choice. And I think it was the Abraham thing. I've misquoted it once on this podcast, and I feel silly, but where Abraham Hicks, they say, you never get it wrong and you never get it done.
Mm-hmm.
Like whatever you do, it's what's going on all the time. It just, we're not static, so if we can remain open and be open in our center, then it will attract the right experiences and people into our lives to help us grow. It won't be like attract the right people, as in people I can really say what I feel about,
Mm-hmm.
what's going on. And no, you're going to be challenged sometimes. You're going to be in your family or friends or acquaintances. You're going to have people test your sort of resolve, as in, what do I know? And that's the other paradox then, is like, what do I know? Because as Lassie's mentor and teacher, Dr. James Mellon, says, I know nothing. Now what can I know? Right? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah. As in what's next, we're if you mentioned like particle and wave that we are, it's growth, it's learning, it's value fulfillment that comes through experiencing light and darkness, doing the shadow work or whatever Jung calls it. But by focusing on that certainty of like, well, I call it trust, or just knowing I'm safe, just knowing that gets you, pulls out of you what the rest of the particles and energy needs, the part of you.
Yeah.
It can only be done by you being you. You can't be this like the if you're recreating a picture on a screen, on a video screen or a TV screen, pixel by pixel, you can't be all of the other pixels. You can't be the whole picture. You can be you, and by being you, you create the part of the mosaic of this ever-changing picture, but it is creating an image, and it's a vibration and an energy. So if we're all doing that, then it's just enrichment. It's just like
Absolutely.
bubbling up all the time. If we're not doing it because we're trying to fit in rather than, it's like the belonging versus the fitting in thing. It's like, what do I belong to? Who am I? Who am I part of? And if it's, if say God is like, you don't have to listen to the whole God thing. You don't have to believe in that or not. I don't ascribe it to a being or person, but I'm saying it's the omnipresence of God as an idea means it's everywhere. So it can't not be somewhere. So you can't say, well, I'm the exception. Like it's only me. Like I'm not worthy to be called, to be trusted with this creative energy. No, you're part of the deal. So
Exactly.
what have you got? Let's show us, so that's great.
I know one of the ladies when I was doing my doctorate. There was a lady. She was 91 years old, and she was doing her doctorate, and she completed before she passed. And she was a Unitarian minister, the Unity Church, and she would always say to me, Donna, remember, God is the center of everything and the circumference of nothing. And I have always loved that, and I think about it, and I just think, like, in this day and age, that my commitment, I'm going to always share with you the best that I know, but I'm reserving the right to improve upon the best that I know. I'm going back to Henry Nelson Weiman and his twofold commitment. And I think when you talked about the people that say, no, I'm not going to change or whatever, I think that's the word. It's the change. If you don't do anything, if you don't play your part, if you don't play your God-given part, then things are going to stay the same, and the world's actually at a loss because you didn't play your part. And I don't know. I just have come to realize that we just have such great opportunity, and I really believe it lives back there in the creativity and the curiosity and the questioning. Because when we stop doing those things, we're just letting other people fill us. Oh, I would want to do that. I don't want to die young. I want to be alive and living and hoping that I can ask questions that'll help other people live and grow and contribute.
Oh, fantastic.
Great.
So,
Okay, so this weird echo is happening, but okay, there it is. Okay, we are about an hour and a half in. So yeah. So even though I know that we could continue talking, I think that we're going to start to wrap things up for today. And we're going to move into the second last segment of the show, which, speaking of questions, is the super rapid fire question round, which is 1 minute during which Glenn will bombard you with a bunch of questions, Donna, and then you just answer top of mind, off the top of your head, no deep thought or critical thinking involved. It's just a fun way to get to know you a little bit better. And then we'll reconvene and wrap up after that. And oh yes, and as always, Glenn, once you have completed your questionnaire, so to speak, then Glenn will let you know what you have won. And I'm saying won in air quotation marks because it's a special prize. Okay, so Honey Bunch, let me know when you are ready. I'm just going to set up.
Honey Bunch, I'm ready.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, hold on. Clock.
As quickly as you can, as little thinking as you can. It's very kind of, I know some of them are going to drive you bananas maybe, but that's fine.
All right, let's see how she does. On your
1
mark,
minute.
get set, go.
What is your favorite city to visit?
Amsterdam.
Okay, now which do you prefer, cats or dogs?
Cats.
Asking for help or going it alone?
Going alone.
Crossword or Sudoku puzzles?
Crossword.
Music or books?
Oh, both.
Sweet or savory?
Both.
Reincarnation or one life?
Reincarnation.
Tea or coffee?
Tea.
Exercising the body or the mind?
Both.
Bicycles or cars?
Bicycle.
Yoga or walking?
Both.
Fire or water?
Water.
Okay, family night or date night?
Family.
Ding, 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 ding. Okay,
Okay.
Glenn, why don't you tell Donna what she's won?
Okay. First thing you've won is a quote from Aristotle. He says, "It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it."
Thank you.
And the last thing is from the Wayne Dyer book, where he's taken the Tao, living the Tao for the year. Change your thoughts, change your life, living the wisdom of the Tao. This is a 37th verse in the category of living in simplicity. It says, "The Tao does nothing, but leaves nothing undone. If powerful men could center themselves in it, the whole world would be transformed by itself in its natural rhythms. When life is simple, pretenses fall away. Our essential natures shine through. By not wanting, there is calm, and the world will straighten itself. When there is silence, one finds the anchor of the universe within oneself."
How fitting for what we've been talking about today.
They find these quotes, find me, and then we talk, and it's like, yeah, that's the right quote.
Perfect.
Oh,
Thank you.
this was such an amazing conversation, Donna. Thank you so much for giving us a couple of hours of your Saturday morning. And so, knowing that you have so much to offer the world, if someone wanted to find out more about you or get in touch with you, how would they go about doing so?
Likely connect with me by email. I don't spend a lot of time on social media unless I'm searching for something. So you have my email, I think. Yeah, I would say likely by email would be best, and then they could just reach out, and I will get back if there's a question.
Okay, now is it okay to give the email out to people who are going to be watching and listening, or would you rather they get in touch with me and then connect and then I give it to
I'd
you?
rather they get in touch with you, because
Okay.
then you have a filter rather than just I'm going to blurb off something to this crazy lady I listen to.
All right, will do. Okay, that is fantastic. Donna, thank you once again for being just such an amazing guest, for being so curious, for living in the question, for just inspiring us to really, really, really tune into the vibration of the earth, to our inner wisdom, to keep exploring, to keep leaning into and stepping into them more, and to really sort of think and reevaluate what learning means, how it can look, how it can feel, and to really continue to sort of open up to just the change that is always happening, knowing that we ourselves are, not subject to that change, that we are actively participating in that change all the time. And so really, if we want to, be be more in the flow or more in tune or whatever, to just be more aware of how powerful and creative we are all the time, and to embrace that power and creativity and just open up to the infinite expansive universe, to the particularization of God that we are at any given time. And yeah, just to ride that wave of God that we are at any given time. So thank you, Donna Palmer, for being our guest today. Thank you, Honey Bunch, Mr. Glenn Sheridan, for co-steering the ship as always. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in, for listening, for watching, however it is that you engage with us. We are so thankful for your time and presence. So this has been another episode of Who Do You Think You Are? There will be another episode coming up in about a week's time, and we look forward to connecting with you then. So in the meantime, if you want to connect with me, then you can find me on Facebook, on my personal page, on my Lassia Cahoot Soul Excavator page. You can also check out my website, which is growing and expanding over the next couple of weeks. That's it for now. Thank you. We look forward to connecting with you again. Bye for now.
Bye,
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
This has been an episode of Who Do You Think You Are? An exploration into how our thoughts, beliefs, and feelings create our reality. My name is Lassia Cahoot, and I have been your host. My co-host has been Glenn Sheridan. We'd like to thank the following for helping make this podcast a reality. Today's special guest, Donna Palmer. Music, Vasco Lorenco copyright, 123rf.com. Background illustration, Sakma Sterke copyright, 123rf.com. For more information on this podcast and our Lassia Cahoot Soul Excavator, please visit www.lassiacahoot.com. If you like what you've heard, please like, subscribe, and let us know by leaving a comment. Thanks for tuning in to Who Do You Think You Are?